Hello, I'm Mary Lynn Newman. I'm Vice President and Deputy General Counsel at Employers Insurance.
And I'm Mark Pingle, Professor of Economics at the University of Nevada, Reno. We have Unit 1, Question 3. Oh, excuse me. You may introduce yourself.
We are Reno High School's Unit 1. My name is April Wilden, and I'll be attending the University of Nevada.
My name is Noah Jarmolsky, and I will also be attending the University of Nevada.
My name is Megan Stetler, and I will be attending Colorado State University.
My name is Matthew Zeng, and I'll be attending Santa Clara University. Our unit coach is Mr. Brian Carlin, and our teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
Thank you, Eric. Unit 1, Question 3. According to Milton Friedman, the existence of a free market does not, of course, eliminate the need for government. On the contrary, government is essential both as a forum for determining the rules of the game and as an umpire to interpret and enforce the rules decided on. To what extent, if any, are Friedman's ideas seen in the development of capitalism in Western civilization? To what extent and in what ways, if any, is a free market economy consistent with the principles and values that underlie the Constitution? Are extreme differences in wealth, income, and political power an inevitable consequence of a free market economy? Why or why not? You may begin.
As Wu-Tang Clan so eloquently put it, cash rules everything around me. Get the money. Dollar bill, y'all.
In this lyric, Method Man recognizes the prevalence of free market capitalism in Western society. In Free to Choose, Milton Friedman emphasizes the importance of balance between government and self-efficacy in a free market, asserting every person was to be his own ruler. Government was established to protect that right. Since its inception, the United States has been a country that encouraged business and been a chief proponent of the development of capitalism in Western society. Government influences and regulation from executive and Congress have led to the development of the free market seen today in America and all of Western civilization.
In drafting the Constitution, the framers intended to protect and preserve people's individual rights. And as Friedman described in his book Capitalism and Freedom, the free market is so essential to preserving individual freedom.
President Calvin Coolidge stated in an address to the Society of American Newspaper Editors, the chief business of the American people is business. Capitalism is an American tradition predating colonization, where in the absence of the established caste system seen in Great Britain, the colonists were forced to develop an economic class system that focused on production. Furthermore, the early capitalist traditions that developed in the American colonies can be seen in the result of popular Protestant work ethic. As sociologist Max Weber puts it in The Protestant Ethic, in practice, God helps those who help themselves.
Aspects of capitalism are even present in the natural rights philosophy of John Locke, in which he states in his second treatise that the measure of property has been well set by the extent of men's labors and the conveniences of life. In time, this early capitalist system developed into the ownership-based system of today that supports economic inequality. This primary tenet and principle of free market economies was included in the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment, with the recognition of all persons' private property.
Free market principles are also included in Article 1, Section 8, giving Congress the power to secure for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. By encouraging individuals' pursuance of knowledge and new ideas, free market principles are reflected. The principle of competition was reflected in Friedman's idea that the great virtue of the free market system is that it only cares whether someone can produce something you want to buy.
The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment prevents states from denying to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. This clause, while used to further African American rights, represents how America's free market economy can lead to economic differences. The clause guarantees people equality of opportunity, but not equality of condition.
In other words, it guarantees the same starting point, but not the same finish, particularly in regards to America's median household income, which saw a decrease with free market President George H.W. Bush and an increase during the Clinton years.
Political power seems to inevitably find its way into the hands of a wealthy in the free market system. Only 5% of Americans have net worths of at least $1 million, yet 36% of Congress have net worths of at least $1 million, according to roll call. However, Adam Smith writes, the houses, the furniture, the clothing of the rich become useful to the inferior and middling ranks of people, arguing that the rich and wealthy provide jobs and opportunities for lower classes.
Extreme differences in wealth is not necessarily a product of a nation's system of government or economics. Instead, the extreme wealth gap is an innate product of human nature itself. In Thomas Hobbes' De Cive, he states that the postulate of human greed, by which each man insists upon his own private fundamental aspect of human nature. Just as Gilded Age capitalism led to a vast difference in wealth, the Cultural Revolution in Communist China also led to the rise of a new wealth gap and middle-class enemies that had previously controlled much of China's wealth.
Like Method Man said, so many bad want to scheme for American dream. No more kings. The cash rules everything now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The last is questions. The question I'll ask is, over time it seems the interpretation of the Constitution has changed. To what extent does our interpretation currently of the Constitution support capitalism, free market economy, as referred to in the question, versus at the founding?
I would argue that the Constitution is actually very much less of a capitalist document, more of a socialist document. And we can see this not only in Article 1, Section 8, where we promote the innovation and the protection of intellectual rights, but we also see this in the Commerce Clause, where Congress is given the right to regulate interstate commerce, suggesting that there is a balance between personal innovation and competition, as well as state regulation and state allocation of resources.
In fact, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said that the Constitution actually doesn't support any economic system in its writings, and I would say that that interpretation has carried on throughout.
However, if we look to various Supreme Court decisions reflecting their interpretations of the Constitution, we can see that today it promotes much less of a free market economy than it did at its founding, beginning with Wickard v. Filburn, which gave Congress the power to regulate local businesses, and through other cases we can see that the government has been able to have increased regulation on businesses that it didn't have during its founding.
Also, within the book, We the People, the economic interpretation of the Constitution published at Cornell University, I believe, it challenges this idea that the Constitution is economically based. It includes a study of all of the founders and their economic beliefs and how incredibly different they all are, and how it's impossible, literally, to interpret the Constitution through economics because of how diverse the beliefs were.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on a theme that raised your comments. You cited Locke, capitalism is equivalent to labor. If you work hard, you succeed. You said it's an innate product of human nature, again, giving the impression that the harder you work, the more successful you will be. But how do you balance that with the concept underlying the Constitution that all men are created equal? So there has to be a balance. How do you balance those that strive and are successful with those that aren't?
As the 14th Amendment provides equality of opportunity and not equality of condition, all men are created equal because they have the opportunity to grow and opportunity for growth, instead of ending up in the same place, which would be equality of condition.
Furthermore, we see this reflected in Aristotle's concepts of what is public and what is private, in the sense that what is private is what one can own and consume, whereas what is private is what one can own and consume, and what is public is what one can share and develop with others. And we can establish equality through this by effectively with classical Republican ideals of civic virtue, and using not only what one can produce, but using that to then better the public sphere, allowing more people to have access to those goods to then produce their own.
Thank you.
What compromises at the Philadelphia Convention were inspired by economics?
Well, again, we can see that the Commerce Clause was very much inspired by economics, in the sense that before predating the Constitution with the Articles of Confederation, many times states would be competing so heavily with one another that there was no coherent trade policy internationally for the United States. So what the Commerce Clause stands as is that it's a compromise between the state's ability to compete with one another, but also with the ability for the United States to compete internationally as a coherent group of trading bodies.
The Supremacy Clause in the Constitution also was based on this conflict between states. States would often have conflicts that would make it so that they can't even trade with each other. And so the Supremacy Clause made it so that Congress's rulings would be able to make it so that they don't have these conflicts because they are supreme to the state's rulings.
And going off of my colleague Megan's point with the Articles of Confederation, one of the primary clauses that it was included in drafting the Constitution is Article 1, Section 8, with Congress's ability to tax and coin money that had previously no set form of commerce throughout the states. So when giving that power to the central government, Congress was able to regulate commerce and regulate the economy. So there were clauses and sections in the Constitution that were motivated by economics.
We have more time? Is that?
Yeah.
I'll ask you, you mentioned, and I like that, you mentioned Ripper versus Gilbert, maybe an important case when you think about the economics that the Constitution provides a foundation for. Do you have any other court cases in mind historically that are more or less important as far as the economics goes related to the Constitution?
Swift Company versus U.S. said that that the Congress can't regulate manufacturing because it doesn't cross state borders. They only have the ability to regulate the goods that come out of the factories. They can't regulate the manufacturing. So that's another important case in regards to the commerce clause.
Case Lochner versus New York was really important in establishing the way that the economic system functioned in the Gilded Age, because it allowed, it set that working hours is a fundamental right, and that someone can make a contract to see how long they can work, and that affected the wages people were getting because of the contracts being a fundamental right.
Furthermore, Gaten versus Wainwright established what means or by what channels commerce was, and by what channels commerce between states counted as, which then furthered the establishment of the Commerce Clause and the powers of Congress.
Excellent. I don't think we have enough time to pursue that. Yeah. Well done.